use it even. Yeah, that's what they used.
I didn't. What is that? Is it the
Mary
bad
take
bone?
one.
The bad, the bone.
I don't know.
Okay.
And
It's okay.
I'm just going to run into
It's
the
okay.
hand clap, and this is just for safety. Can you see me, John?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. For synchronicity.
That's right. All right, you may converse at will.
Okay. How about that one? There we go. Everybody. If everybody had an ocean across the USA, then everybody'd be surfing. It's kind of laid back. California, yeah, I like it. You see him wearing their baggies, I'll rock your sandals too. Bushy, bushy blonde. Okay, now we're doing like a hillbilly surfing USA. You know, I like it. We good? We want one classical, okay. One sort of beautiful. So this is the swan. This is kind of why everybody plays the cello.
Beautiful. Thank you
The
so
cello
much
song.
for sharing
The
with
swan
us.
song.
Yeah, here we go. Yay! Mary, we're so thrilled to have you on the show. You're a musician in so many different capacities. You're a cellist, you're a music educator, you're on faculty at CIM, the Cleveland Institute of Music, one of the premier conservatories in the world. You're involved with outreach all across the world. You're a radio personality, and the award-winning Cavani Quartet, of which you are a founding member, just celebrated its 31st anniversary. Welcome.
Thank you, Joel.
It's so good to have you on. Did you always expect that you would be a musician of so many diverse artistic activities?
I don't remember thinking, oh, well, if I'm going to be a musician, I have to do all kinds of different things with it. I think as a child, I loved music. I had an obsession with Julie Andrews. I had to listen to musicals every day. And then my mother's father had been a cellist. And although he had passed when she was a little girl, so I never met him, I heard so much about the cello that I was very interested in playing that. But once I started playing the cello, I also wanted to keep singing my musicals and pop tunes, so I took up guitar. And I remember when I was 15 years old, my parents and I sort of sat down and they actually drew up a contract. And they said, now you need to decide what you want to focus on, because actually I just happened to be doing every sport that was offered, as well as theater, and then stuff with my cello and other music. And so I signed this contract saying that I would practice 2 hours a day before I did any extracurricular or any other type of non-Western art music on the cello. And so I did. And I think when I got to college, I was pursuing Western art music, classical music, the cello. I knew I wanted to be a cellist and become able to play at the highest level possible. And then, well, I guess it was my second year of college I discovered chamber music. I think before that I had thought chamber music was not for me. I thought, I just want to play my solos, and the people who play chamber music, they seem to understand something I don't get. And chamber music seems very elitist and rather snobby, so I don't think I would like to do that. I'm just going to play my solos. And then I got the opportunity to play chamber music, and actually one of my first really incredible experiences was with the person who's currently the first violinist of the Cavani Quartet, Annie Follard. And we started playing some music together, and I understood finally that the feeling that I got playing that was so unique. Mm-hmm. It was like turning a double play and getting a home run with a lot of great people playing fantastic art. And it happened almost every phrase. So it's kind of like, it was like a narcotic for me. And I thought, now I know, I want to do something with chamber music. But when the Cavani Quartet was finally formed, I was still in college. I didn't know at the time that so many of my other interests could kind of take fruition in what we were going to do in building this institution together. So right away we started making teaching and reaching out to new audiences. We tried to develop those skills as much as we were developing our ways of interpreting the great masterpieces that were the art form that are the string quartet. And so because of that, I've been able to do a lot of different things. But like having a radio show, no, that wasn't in the forecast. I didn't even think about that. That was a happy accident. And being able to do so many different things, like being able to play Bach and Beethoven and Beach Boys, hadn't occurred to me.
So 31 years of the Cavanis, what's the value of chamber music as opposed to, say, you were growing up aspiring to be a soloist or perhaps an orchestral musician?
Sure. Well, of course, now that I have been doing or devoting my life to it for 31 years, I really have an understanding of the value educationally of chamber music. There's something that it does in the development for a young musician of developing the ear, and also the notion of developing your own inner rhythm. You, of course, when you collaborate, you listen very critically to yourself and to what's going on around you. And because each voice, chamber music is music that's composed for one person to a part without conductor, and usually from 2 to 20 people, you have to have your own inner conductor that you contribute as you're listening to. Then you have to listen probably in ways you wouldn't have the opportunity to do, or in ways that would enhance your solo playing, like you're listening to someone else when they have the melody and trying to figure out with what you're doing, if you're accompaniment, how can I make their melody more wonderful? Or if you have the melody, how can I respond to what's going on around me in a way that will inspire what I'm doing with my melody? So I see that chamber music educationally is an incredible tool. But I also believe that in the last, since I've been doing it professionally for the last 30 some years, what it does for society and performance art in general, it's got a very wonderful place. Because of technology, the world is becoming so connected, and I think people seek out more and more intimate experiences. So going to hear a string quartet or a piano trio or a piano quartet, it's kind of a wonderful thing for people to do. So I see chamber music as something that it enhances what you would do as a soloist. I think an orchestral musician, here we are in Cleveland, which is home of one of the orchestras that really feels like a chamber ensemble, the way those
Absolutely.
musicians listen to each other, right? And all those things they all enhance all different aspects of musicianship.
In speaking about being a successful musician today, in
yes.
today's world, is it essential to diversify one's activities, or is there also a risk in diversifying too soon?
That's such a great question, and I don't know if there's a risk of diversifying too soon. I know, of course, to play these instruments at the level one has to have a career, you have to do a lot of focus on that, of course. There's the whole 10,000 hours spent practicing and being alone with your instrument and figuring out what you need to do with the guidance of a great teacher. But I have found more and more in the last decade or so, it seems like young people, the young artists that I work with, they usually are quite diverse, more than I was when I was their age. I didn't even think about some of the stuff that they think about doing till I was older. The whole idea of like playing a Beach Boys song along with playing Beethoven, for example. I think that nowadays, young people who have an interest in different styles of music don't hesitate to try to do it on their cello or violin or viola, where not everybody of my generation would think about doing that or diversifying that way.
Is that something you encourage your students to do?
I do. I think that it really does enhance and it inspires you to do lots of different things. And the other thing, you were asking me about, having this notion of doing so-called outreach or interfacing with the community along with performing in traditional settings. Again, I'm finding that the young people that I work with, they get that there's a relevant aspect to doing that and they want to do it. I don't have to convince them anymore. I remember when we first came to CIM. It was 1988 and there were maybe 10 groups that we worked with, and I'd say a few of them learned their entire work. And they were all kind of doing it for fun. And then the rest of the student body didn't really want to do much chamber music about within 5 years, more and more people wanted to do it. We had 25 groups, and half of them were completing works each semester. Then after about 10 years, we had 30 groups, and 2/3 of them were completing their works. I have found over time that it seems like the students that come to the Cleveland Institute want to play chamber music, they want to play orchestra music, and they want to enhance their solo playing. And along with that, they seem to be very savvy about social media and getting their art out on the internet and being able to go and play for children or going to a retirement community. They get that all that is important to them as artists. And that, I feel like that's just changed over time. And it's kind of amazing and inspiring for me.
What about learning to speak about music as well?
That's another thing. They kind of understand that as scary as public speaking is, it's important. And more of them have already garnered experience as young people. I mean, I know that a lot of the festivals that I teach at, we encourage these, 12-year-olds to start trying to talk about their music. Or just to talk on stage in a way that's clear and enunciated and, doesn't have a decrescendo at the end of every sentence. Or a question like, should I do that? I don't know. Do you like it? Okay. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, they get it. They get that it's important. Of course, they don't speak as eloquently as you.
My goodness, what thank you.
Yeah, because, there's nobody like Schultz.
So Mary, you've had really some of the most legendary teachers in the history of cello. My favorite of whom was Janos Starker. Can you tell me a little bit about the influence of your teachers?
Oh, wow. Well,
I mean, I know that there were a number of them.
I had a lot of amazing teachers and mentors, and I think the first probably world famous performing cellist that I aspired to study with was Mr. Starker. And so I attended Indiana University to work with him, and while I was there, he encouraged me to work with a former student of his who was then on the faculty named Gary Hoffman. And so working with both of them was incredible. Actually, Gary Hoffman, in a lot of ways, became my hero because I would play softball with him every Saturday, and he was an incredible shortstop. So I would play first base, and he would make these great plays, and then it would open me up to wanting to do everything he said in my lessons where I know that's strange, but and then I got very close to Mr. Starker because he had me house sit and take care of his dog Coda, which was this adorable Norwegian elk hound. Yeah, I love dogs. So I had the good fortune of working with them. And then because Mr. Starker was such good friends with Aldo Pariso at Yale, I studied with him, but only for a year because my quartet had started, and we were fortunate enough to get a fellowship to study at the Eastman School with the Cleveland Quartet. So there I studied with Paul Katz because I wanted to be a quartet cellist at that time, and he was one of the preeminent quartet cellists and great teachers. So they've all been incredible and influential in my life. But along with cello teachers, I would say that Peter Soloff, I call him Peter Herbert Soloff because his middle name is the same as my grandfather's name, who, of course, was the second violinist of the Cleveland Quartet. Huge influence. I always think whenever I'm verging on getting road rage or getting mad at one of my colleagues because I don't like their tempo in a quartet, the feelings are similar. I know that's intense. What would Peter Soloff do? WWPSD. And then in the last 15 years of my life, an amazing person named Toby Perlman, who started the Perlman music program. I've never met anyone with the type of wisdom she has. It inspires me so much. And I say it jokingly, but I really mean it. If and when I ever grow up, I want to be like her. She's really incredible.
How important is it for a successful student-teacher relationship to have a human connection?
That's a really good question. I'd like to ask you that. How important do you think it is?
I think for me it was very important because I needed to establish a certain trust and a certain sense of who I wanted to be as a person. So I happen to admire my teacher, Sergei Baban, intensely as a human being.
Right.
So it was also important to be friends, but I know that for some teachers, it's also important to establish clear boundaries in terms of I'm the teacher, I'm the student.
Well, I have to say, I do admire the way your teacher does that with his students, and it seems to be that he has a unique relationship with each one of you.
Yes.
He has so many amazing students like yourself that he's mentored and continues to mentor. I find that I want to make my students, of course, feel safe and know that they can trust that I have their best interests at heart. I'm not so sure how much I want to know or be involved in their personal lives sometimes. I know some teachers want more of that than others.
It seems some
you
are
know?
almost psychologists for their
Right,
students.
right. And I do believe that as a good teacher, you have to be a bit of a counselor. You
Yes.
have to. But I also think in some ways it's good to just have enough separation so that they know that they can count on that too.
Yes.
It's a fine line. And I think, Jolt, it may vary from individual to individual. Some students want more, they want more daily interaction. They want to text me all the time, and we have a rapport doing that, and we can be very whimsical. And others, we're just right down to business. And so I think it varies for teacher to teacher, student to student.
If each master teacher has an individual style and an individual voice, is there one single idea that you try to impart to your students?
Oh my gosh. You asked such good questions.
It's hard to narrow it down to just one.
Wow, well.
But is there something that you want your students to really take from you?
I think it's interesting. I think whether they're my private cello students or groups that I'm coaching or teaching, chamber music groups, I think I would love for my students to understand that in order to really convey and communicate their art, their music, they have to have at least 2 focus words that they're trying to prove with every note they play. And that might be, and of course into that goes all the things you do to prepare sonically and the crafting in the instrument and the sound and the studying of the score and the intricacy of the music. But that would be to really know what character you're trying to prove with it. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it dance-like? Is it singing? And then also to have an understanding of how to address your instruments, in a purely physical way, so that as you lead yourself, your technique is almost interspersed with how you're breathing and singing musically in your mind. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
You're nice.
So outreach education has been so central to your activities.
Sure.
And you've taught with the Perlman program all around the world. You've been in China, you've been in Israel. Do you notice a difference in learning styles wherever you go? Is there a difference in terms of what the students need? And I ask this because there's such a surge of interest in Western classical music in China, for example.
Yes.
Do you find
Well-
that people are just as receptive there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's kind of wonderful. I went to China, I think, in 2003. So I haven't been there for quite a while. But, of course, over the years, there's just more and more musicians coming from China to study in the West. And I think it's amazing how in this humongous country, Western art music has become so relevant. And playing these instruments well is so important to so many. So I find that kind of amazing. I think that that you can see how it's translating in so many ways in a global fashion. Just music communicates like other things can't. We both know that. One thing I have to say is that, you talked about the difference in how learning styles or what people want. I mean, when I went to China and coached chamber music, I was coaching I had a translator who was just a student, and we became good friends. But Madame Ding, who was then the chamber music guru in Shanghai, ended up becoming my translator. And we talked a lot about chamber music in China. And she told me, because she had been a party member, she told me that when she was in the party and had to teach chamber music to her students, she would take Chinese folk tunes and arrange them in the style of Haydn, Beethoven, and Mozart, so her students could learn to play that music, even though they weren't supposed to be playing the Western music. And we started talking about, how, with the way China was changing, with one child per family, that chamber music was actually struggling there for a while. Now it's become an integral part of their curriculum, I think. The conservatories are huge. They're bursting at the seams with artists that want to get out and play. So I mean, especially as a chamber music teacher, I was fascinated. In fact, I have to say that there was one group that performed the Dvorak Piano Quintet. And after they performed, the first violinist came out and took a solo bow.
Wow.
And, he was a boy. He was 15, 16. He'd never done chamber music before. He thought he'd just played Dvorak Piano Quintet violin concerto. He didn't know. And now he's actually, I think, concertmaster of a fine orchestra somewhere. But but that was his first. He didn't understand, and it was something new. Now there's all kinds of ensemble music. The orchestras are thriving in China. The conservatories are doing well. Israel's different, but I do find that it is different in the different places. Like the Israeli children all seem to love. They already get chamber music, But of course, I've just been there in the last 5 or 6 years.
And speaking about chamber music,
yes,
you've been extensively involved with the Perlman Music Program.
Yes.
For our viewers who don't know what that is,
Sure.
What is it? Where is it?
Sure. The Perlman Music Program was founded by Toby Perlman and later involved in a very important way her husband, Itzhak Perlman. I think it's celebrating its 22nd anniversary this year, and I became involved in it in 2000. And they brought me in because they wanted their chamber music curriculum enhanced, and I came for a few weeks, and then that changed over the summers. So now I am the associate director of the Perlman Music Program, and they have many things that they do. In the summer, they have a campus on Shelter Island, which is right in the little split of Long Island, out by the Hamptons, and we have 2 programs. One is a summer music school for young violinists, violists, and cellists and bass players from the age of 12 to 18. It's mostly solo with chamber music, orchestra, and chorus.
Wow.
And then we also have a chamber music workshop, which I'm the director of, which is for 18 and older, mostly college age or young professionals who come and just study chamber music and chorus. We always sing. That's become a big part of what we do there. The Perlmans are very much involved in the notion of building community and connecting people. So we sing every day because none of us are singers. So we all come together and do something that we all don't know how to do, and we end up loving doing it together. It brings us together in a very special way. And in the meantime, it just so happens that both Toby and Itzhak Perlman are passionate chamber musicians. They love it, and they kind of want the whole thing to be about chamber music. So I'm very fortunate to be involved with that because we read all the time. Itzhak will just read. He'll read for hours. He just loves to play chamber music. And anyway, so it's multifaceted. And so we have these 2 programs in the summer, but we also do a winter residency in Sarasota every winter. I work for the Department of Redundancy Department, okay? And we also then go to Israel pretty much every spring. We've done trips to China. There's other trips in the works. And we do a residency in Vermont and Palm Beach. So, yeah, we do lots of different stuff.
Mary, I have to ask you about
Yeah.
this beautiful instrument
Oh,
that you have here.
yes,
Is there a
yes.
story behind it, and how important is it for any instrumentalist to find an instrument that resonates with one's own voice?
It's interesting coming from a pianist because you probably have to change instruments so often.
All the time. We don't usually
But
have
you
a
never,
choice.
right? You're like, I hope it's a Steinway, and I hope it's a D, right? So I fortunately don't have to worry about that. This is owned by a wonderful family in Columbus, Ohio. It's a cello by Viome. Jean-Baptiste Viome was probably the most famous Parisian luthier, and it was made in the 1850s. It was actually constructed in a village outside of Paris and then brought into his shop for varnishing. And if you can see on the back, there's a little seal. And that is Saint Cecilia, no pun intended, who was the patron saint of music. So these instruments are known as the Saint Cecilia cellos. And the family who owns this cello, it just so happened that Yvonne Bury, her mother, their family, in escaping the Nazis, got out with the clothes on their backs, some jewelry, and this cello. And her mother was at the time a teenager. And they escaped to England. Her mother then married and moved to Denver, played cello in the community orchestra, but mostly taught piano to every child in the neighborhood. And this sat in a closet for 40 years. So when her mother passed, they got it out, and they had it restored, and then they decided they wanted to have a professional musician play it so that it could, because playing these fine instruments is very important to their longevity. And so they fortunately have loaned it to me. I've had it for the last 10 or 11 years. And, in terms of how important it is for us to find an instrument that resonates our voice, I think that a great instrument will inspire the artist to want to play more beautifully or do more with what they're conveying. And this cello has a beautiful resonant bass range. So the upper register, although it's lovely, it's not quite as profoundly powerful as that. But I mostly play in a string quartet. So having this as a tool is incredible for me. So when I play, you know, like Opus 59 number 1, I know I can count on this. And even if I just want to play something soft, like, you know, like, it always gives me a nice little growl. It's kind of a little line that goes, and it's also very powerful. So if I'm doing, you know, like an Opus 95 Beethoven that's just serious, it's got that. I can count on it. So I love that about it.
And apparently it has enough diversity in it that it can handle, I know that one of your hobbies is arranging pop songs.
Yes.
This instrument can really handle that
well,
too?
you know, I mean, you know, like, you know, you can do anything with the cello. But this guy, he's a good rhythm guitar guy. So that's like, well, she got her daddy's car and she cruised through the hamburger stand now. Seems she forgot all about the library like she told her old man now. You know? You can have fun
This is
with this cello.
fantastic. Speaking of fun, this is a question that I'm so thrilled to ask you because you're the host of a radio show called Offbeat. Tell me about how this got started. Why the title Offbeat?
Oh, well, I guess the show's been on for about 12th season next year. Anyway, I'm not sure when. It's over 10 years. I know we had our 10th anniversary recently. But it's produced by the Cleveland Institute of Music, and it was the brainchild originally of the person who was then and now is currently the head of audio recording at the Cleveland Institute, a wonderful, wonderful man and musician named Alan Bice.
Alan Bice,
a
one of my
Grammy
favorites.
Award-winning producer, actually. Just won a Grammy. And he, along with the then director of the marketing department at the Cleveland Institute, decided they wanted to produce a radio show that sort of showed what went on behind the scenes in classical music.
This is kind of what we're doing here.
Alan's vision was, though, to try to have a radio show that kind of brought together the irreverence of Howard Stern and the music educational aspect or inspiration of Carl Haas. That was the genesis for it. So they were holding auditions for someone to host the show, and they came up to me and said, "We think you should audition." I said, "What? You know, I play the cello. I'm a silly cellist who's mentally 14. Why do you want me?" And they said, just do it. And I said, "Well, what do I have to do?" He said, "Just interview one of your students and submit it, and we'll see." And it just so happened I had one of my students was a double major in audio recording. So I just said, "Set up the mics and record me interviewing you." And he said, "Okay." So I submitted that, and then, you know, I think that they had a lot of different people audition for that spot. Most of them were probably radio professionals, but I think because I did have a little bit of the silliness and the irreverence that they were after, along with the knowledge and background in music, they went with me as their voice. So the show had a name that they thought was something like me. That's one of the things that they wanted. So it was Offbeat, you know, because I'm sometimes a little offbeat, a little non sequitur, if you will. And the show's very, you know, they're between trying to get everybody who comes through the halls of CIM or comes into Cleveland, or topics that we think would be interesting for our listening audience to learn about, you know, what goes on behind the scenes.
And you've had such a diverse array of guests and really some very famous, legendary musicians. You just recently aired the show about Don Weilerstein.
Yeah. Oh, did it go on already? I haven't heard it yet.
You elicit
I want to hear it.
You elicit such great answers from your guests.
Oh,
what does it take to ask great questions?
Oh my gosh.
To elicit such good answers as you do.
I feel like we could talk about this because I want to know what you. Anyway, I am learning, as you know. It's a constant change, and I think a lot like teaching, you have to sort of understand the comfort zone and make people feel safe, that they can trust you. At least that's what I try to do. I don't try to necessarily I don't try to provoke things that much. I'm more interested in. Let's see, like when I watched the Rosie O'Donnell show, and she, I think, made the guests feel they were special and loved and safe, and then that they could be funny too along with her.
Yes.
So sometimes I just get a vibe from people. If they want to go down the route of whimsy, we'll do that. And sometimes I often find like I get a very warm connection with my guests. I think that's what I feel anyway, and I feel so grateful for the way they'll open up about their passion. So I think a lot of times I'm trying to get facts that they're comfortable sharing, and then things that describe what they feel is special about what they do, and trying to find that sometimes is not so easy. Sometimes though, if they're another musician, it's in the way we talk about like the key of E minor or something like that, and that then we can start going some wonderful places with that. So I don't know. I try to find a way to relate to something that we both feel is special or unique about music.
Do you have a favorite composer for cello?
You know, that's just a really,
I know, that's
really
the
hard
horrible
question to ask. No, it's a great question, and gosh, you know, well, oh.
Of course, in terms of concerto repertoire, a lot of people would say the Dvorak.
Look, I'm not ashamed of my passion for Dvorak. I love Dvorak. You know, he's one of my desert island composers for sure. I think he's the best blues, best Western arts composer of the blues. Nobody does Lonely like Dvorak. So he's like, or. Which is that, you know, an incredible D minor movement from the great American quartet. So yeah, I love Dvorak, but you know, I love Bach, and I love Beethoven, and even though Mozart didn't write any concertos for the cello, come on, Wolfie, it's okay. I'm okay with it. I love Mozart too. There are a lot of good ones. Bartok, Chaloha, Bartok, what? So, you know, I have a point of view from their chamber music as well as their solo cello compositions. So I'm thinking about all those different things when I'm thinking about it, you know. What about, who's your favorite composer for piano? Like, can you answer that?
I don't think I could,
Like, is it
actually.
kind of who you're playing at the moment?
Yes, it always has to be.
Because whenever I see you play, I feel like you're so in love with what you're doing.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no, thank you.
What motivates you as a musician today, in today's world? What's your motivation? Who inspires you? I think when I was growing up and going through conservatory, I always had role models that I looked up to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that gave me a reason to want to do better.
Mm-hmm. I concur. I mean, I think when I was in college, I would just worship my cellists that I loved their playing, and I would try to imitate them, and I grew a lot as my own person trying to imitate them.
Who were some of those cellists?
Oh gosh, well, my teacher Gary Hoffman, I remember just loving his playing. Probably the hero of all time for me though is Jacqueline Dupre. There's just no question. I never got to see her perform live, but every recording I've ever heard by Jackie.
What was it about her?
Okay, first of all, I feel even in the recording medium, which can be, you know, rather impersonal sometimes, I felt that it was very personal. I felt the passion came through. Her variance of color, her use of rubato, her connection to the intervals, it all spoke to me and still does. And of course, I'm very lucky that I get to work with the Perlmans, who were very, very close to her and almost can't even talk about her because they get upset. They can't even really listen to her or watch her without starting to cry. And finding out that she was an incredible person. You know, I mean, Toby tells me all the time, Mary, you would have loved her, and she would have loved you, and she just loved life, and you know, and anyway, so she was probably, and still is, one of my great heroes, although these days, like whenever Allie Weilerstein comes to town, I go here every second I can. I mean, I've known Allie since she was born. She's like family to me, but I feel she's an incredible communicator, and I get uber inspired by her. Oh, so inspired. I don't know. There's many more cellists I love. My students inspire me so much. I mean, I get up and I think, oh, I get to go hear so-and-so do this today. Oh, I'm so excited, you know, and then I have to choose the right kind of lipstick to go with that.
What is the most rewarding aspect of being a musician for you?
Wow, you ask such, now you are a provocateur, you provoke great things. Let me see.
If you can think of one thing.
I think the opportunity to connect. I think that's the greatest. you're connecting with history and great composers and what they've created and the tradition. You're connecting with the people you work with and your colleagues, and then ultimately you try to connect with the people who you're communicating that to. So connecting, it's very much part of my heart and my music making.
Mary, thank you so much for being on the show, for your time, and for your music. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would give you a hug, except we have this beautiful, expensive instrument between us.
Yeah, it would be tricky. I bet we could do it if we worked on it.
Yes, we had a little bit of choreography. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It was fun.
Yes.